Welcome to the Mission Driven Leader, presented by TeleoConnects.com, where we explore the new, unknown, and innovative themes for work and give people the ability to show up resilient every day. Here are your hosts, former Chief Knowledge Officer of NASA, Ed Hoffman, and partner and Vice President of Portfolio Management at Teleo, Laurel Sim.
Well, welcome back to the Mission Driven Leader. Ed, as usual, I'm always excited for our guests, but I got to tell you, I got a little extra love for this person because his name is CJ and your name is ED and my name is PO. So I feel like we're just kindred spirits all the way together.
Yeah, except as I have to correct you, really my name is EJ.
EJ, so since when?
Edward J. Hoffman.
I've been calling you the wrong name this entire time, Eddie?
For years.
Wow.
But so it's CJ, EJ, and Poe.
Yeah.
What's the PO stand for? It's like post office box?
I don't know. I don't know.
Laurel Poe Sim, because she's a provocateur. She's provocative, she provokes, she stimulates energy. The work years ago that I studied of Edward de Bono when I was at NASA, he says that to create a creative environment, different ideas, different views, one of the tools he emphasizes is provocation, and he spells it P-O. And so once I started working and once I was friends with Laurel, I realized I'm around a world-class provocateur. So post
Yeah, most definitely, CJ. If you were to ask my husband, I'm definitely a provoker. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, we are so excited to have you here today, CJ. Like when I look at your profile of how I explain who you are and everything that you've accomplished, I just don't even know where to begin. I guess a big part of why I wanted to have you on the show is because I've actually attended some of your training sessions, and I've been in your in-person speaking engagements, and I'm just so taken aback by your way to explain inclusion and diversity in a way that makes people really understand how we're putting in roadblocks. And I thought it was really fantastic, and that's a big part of why I wanted you here today. Excluding the 20 years of, cultural consulting experience and all of your, educational accolades, which are quite impressive, to be honest. I really wanted to celebrate you and the fact that you are promoting your book right now, which is What's Your Zip Code Story? And you've been all over Europe, and now you're kicking off in North America. And I take real pride in what you're accomplishing and understanding it and trying to be more connected to it. So I want to celebrate you today. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Laura. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ed. This is awesome. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Well, I guess as we get started, I'll kick it off with my first challenging question of the virtual workplace. And I'd really like to get your perspective on, do you feel that the biases and challenges of inclusion and diversity have been improved because of virtual workplace, or have they actually become more challenging to break down and improve upon? I'm really curious about that world right now.
So, when you were a kid and you had that game, for us, it was Chuck E. Cheese in this area. And it was a whack-a-mole game.
I love that game.
Whack-a-mole would come up and you try to hit it. And it was really cruel for kids, actually, right? It was like really cruel. And adults would look back and laugh, right? But you would try to hit this whack-a-mole and it would move every time you hit it. I mean, you have to be like a superstar. But anyway, that's really how I see the challenges. They're in one area in person because you have different senses, you have different experiences in person than you do in Zoom. So the challenges have shifted. So in person, you obviously have the visual, you have the communication issue, you have the office, that's the culture that's creating this experience. But when you move into the virtual world, now you have you have the background. People have biases against people's backgrounds. You have kids that may be in the way. You have cats and dogs. And there is another environment that you're in. You have the Zoom time versus real time. You have people putting their camera on versus not having their camera on. People who may not have the proper Zoom etiquette, or there's people that are being cut off or excluded because of Zoom rules are different. So I think it has, in some cases, put us in a better situation in terms of culture, because we have more time with our family. For those who want to spend more time with their family, you don't have to do the carpet commute instead of the actual commute. But then there's the other challenges that go with that. There is the fact that we're not as connected as we were when we were in person. The fact that there is isolation issues that are happening. There is then the social economic aspect that comes into play with terms of do you have the resources to have the proper setup for these calls? So to answer your question, a yes and no.
Perfect. That's clear as mud. I love it. That's fantastic. I do wonder about that a lot, because now it's not going to go away. I think we're going to have a bit more of a balance, a bit more of a hybrid approach to the work days. Mm-hmm. Yet I don't believe that organizations have really solved how to engage people properly. And I think that maybe your next book should just be about solving that.
Well, I'm actually speaking at a conference. I'm not sure if it's the SHRM, Society for Human Resource Management, or the Workplace Forum, where we're going to be talking about that specific topic. How do you become an inclusive leader in a virtual world? And what are the techniques that we've used? And so we were early adopters we had no choice because COVID happened, and many of our clients wanted to still deliver training. And we made a lot of mistakes. That's how you learn, right? And I know Ed knows that from being in that experience with NASA.
Then I should be brilliant.
Make as many mistakes as possible. So we went into this virtual world trying to be really inclusive, and we found out that we weren't in some cases. And some cases we were causing more damage in our clients as well. And so what we found was that there were certain things that worked, and I love to, as we have this conversation, we could talk about some of those things and how this led to what does it really look like to create not just an inclusive organization where how do we still deliver equity to our employees on a global scale, who are some in person, some are not, but also how do we experience belonging in a digital world? Like, that's crazy. So one of the things that just popped in my mind, because I love to eat, I love food. There are apps and programs that you can use that if you're doing a coffee chat or something, everyone in different parts of the world, no matter where they are, can receive coffee or something delivered to their door so that they can all be included in this one experience. And so it's technology that has helped us. It has come to save the day, although technology has also caused some challenges. So we can talk about some of those other solutions, but yeah, that's, I think, where a lot of our clients are. They're trying to figure out, how do we now deal with this transition that has happened? We were already dealing with the challenge in a different way, but now we were forced to put ourselves in positions where we're in our houses to still work remotely. And so, yeah, it's really interesting, some of the strategies. I want to talk about a little bit. Hopefully we get a chance to talk about design thinking. And so we use this okay, so you're shaking your head. So design thinking is one of the concepts that we use in diversity, equity, inclusion, not all our clients, because my background is engineering. It's like, how do you solve a problem when you don't have the people who that problem affects on the front end of solving that solution? That is inclusion. And to give them the right to say yes or no is equity. But you have to have that techie mind to bring it into the social plus emotional intelligence and the social and cultural awareness, and mesh those two together to really think like that to solve problems. So in a way, we're using a hybrid approach where we're using design thinking and we're using social emotional intelligence and cultural awareness to solve problems.
We will absolutely be talking about design thinking, because I think it's misunderstood by a huge percent of organizations out there. And it's not always delivered consistently to allow for it to be really like effective and productive and high performing. So I'm very curious about that. But before that, I just want to check, Ed, did you get the coffee that I sent you for this session? It should be.
I haven't got anything.
Oh, weird.
in years, Laurel, and I meant to speak to you about that, as a matter of fact.
Well, sorry
Maybe your
about that.
neighbor did.
I,
Maybe
Maybe your
next
I
neighbor.
do have
time.
a question. I do have a question that, for me, I think is important. I see, like anything, I see organizations that take it seriously, and I see organizations that they know they have to say they're taking it seriously, but either they don't know what they're doing or they don't. So diversity, equity, inclusivity. What does it look like when a team or organization is creating an environment that's successful in this area? Are there certain things you probably work with certain organizations or teams and you say this is great to be because they get a lot of it right, and there's probably others you go into and you say this is going to be a lot of work. What does it look like when it's kind of working, CJ?
So I want to give you two perspectives. So one perspective is my own experience working for a diversity, equity, inclusion organization. And the first time I experienced what it actually looked like, I didn't believe that something like that exists. And so it was bring your whole self to work. And when I saw the leader of the organization, the founder of the organization, a global trainer, speaker, Google Talk person, all these accolades he had, and he was just wearing shorts and flip-flops in the office. And I didn't really know who he was. I was like, who's that guy? Why is he wearing shorts and flip-flops? And they were like, because there's no clients in the office. But still, that's not right. And I couldn't get that because I come from engineering. We had to wear a tie. I hated ties. It was a part of just the way of the thinking. And so I couldn't understand that. They even had a nap room. So if you were tired, because they'd done research to find out that if you actually take a break every hour, like 15 minutes, that you're actually more productive. The brain science is supporting you're actually more productive. So they had a quiet room where you could take a nap, you could meditate, you could read, you could look out the window. And I really tapped someone on the shoulder and said, hey, you shouldn't be sleeping on the job. And they were like, why are you bothering me? This is my nap time. And so it was really weird for me that this was actually happening. And another thing that happened was you were able to go into someone, knock on someone's door, someone on the C-suite level or the founder of the organization, and say, I have a problem. And they would actually brainstorm with you right then and there at times when they had time, give you resources, help you with your personal career. So they had a culture of inclusion. They had a culture of mentoring. They didn't have a mentor program, no formal mentor. It was a culture of mentoring. And so I didn't know how to take that, but that's what it looks like from the inside. And then we had a conversation around this CEO was delivering a training with about 15 people in the room, and someone didn't agree with his approach. And instead of brushing this person off, he's a very tall gentleman. He sat down and then he pushed his seat. You have the little button that takes you down even further because he's super tall. He even went down lower and he said, okay, explain to me, help me understand. What does this look like? How do we solve this problem? And what he did was he showed inclusivity as a leader. He didn't talk about it. It wasn't a title. He actually delivered it. Yesterday, I was talking to a client and he said, one of our HR professionals, he said, leadership and information like this is not taught, it's caught. Not taught, it's caught. And so right there, I was catching this experience because I was I was experiencing it. It wasn't something that you saw on the wall or, a title. It was actually happening. So that's my experience on the inside. Now, with my experience on the outside, I have a client that I'm working with now. I am really, really trying. They're an attorney organization. And I'm really, really trying to do a case study on them, like a written case study, because they have it. They have figured out. They have a very inclusive leader at the top of the organization that is creating inclusion for the organization by having difficult conversations, by saying we want to be more inclusive, not just from one identity, but for all identities, not just the marginalized group, or not just this identity, or not just that identity, but from a global perspective, people who speak different languages, different time zones, who have different, who would fall inside of marginalized identities. So one of the myths is that diversity, equity, inclusion is only for like people of color or women or LGBTQ. It's not for heterosexual white men who may have what we call privilege. This person is saying, no, everyone is a part of this conversation. Everyone has different experiences, and we're all in this together. And you see they have a maturity model on their website. So these are things that when you go to their website, it looks, it doesn't just, to your point, Ed, or EJ, is that correct?
EJ, yeah. EJ and CJ.
It doesn't look, because you can go to some organizations and they say we have a page that says we do diverse,
right?
We believe in diversity, but you actually see it in the C-suite level. That's where you can really tell. But then it actually shows up in the organization when you get there, and then we actually have difficult conversations. They have a maturity model. People can say, hey, you know what, I don't agree with this, and they have a dialogue, and they're actually able to solve things in a different manner. So when organizations really start to have this conversations, I always tell them, think about, are you being reactive or proactive? When George Floyd happened, organizations called me and said, I was on a call with 100 tech companies. I'll say tech type of company, industry companies, manufacturing companies in Washington State. And they said, should we make a statement about what's going on in Black Lives Matter and George Floyd? And I looked at them and said, why? And they were like, what do you mean, why? Why not? We should. I said, if you're not actually doing the work, you actually do more harm by putting up something that says we support Black Lives Matter. Because at the end of the day, that sign doesn't mean anything if things aren't systems aren't changing within your organization. Culture and systems, which is part of leadership, needs to change. So it's almost better to say, this is a problem and we'll deal with it, but we're actually going to do internal work first before we start putting out, comments and things just to make sure people are appeased.
So what I hear you saying, and I love it if I'm hearing the right thing, is that it's about people. When you see it happening, people are able to be themselves. You can be the person wearing the shorts and the flip-flops. You can talk about issues that are genuinely important to you. It's about respect and appreciating different perspectives. And it's that sense when you're working in a place you feel appreciated. And that's one of the things I think we can work on in this podcast, because Laurel is always telling me I shouldn't be wearing that. I had to change 3 times before we started this, and I just want to put that out there that
Lauren needs to
and comb his hair twice. And comb his hair twice. Yeah. No. But what's one other thing that's interesting that I'm noticing, CJ, from what you're saying here is that all these organizations now are asking consulting firms to come and help them build inclusion programs. Inclusivity. My gosh, that was a tough word this morning.
That's easy for you to say.
Yeah,
I have practiced for some years.
Couple of years. Bet you can say it backwards too, probably. And have all these different plans for diversity and inclusion and making sure the biases are not existing or forming. And yet it's just a plan, and then they put it on a shelf and they don't do anything about it. And like, I'm seeing it all over the place. And especially different federal government will ask for, when you're doing a grant, they'll ask, well, what's your inclusion plan? Okay, well, I'll write it up for you, but so what?
Right.
So what? Okay. The company wrote up the plan, but they're never going to get reviewed on it.
It's
they're
about
never
doing.
Follow through on it. And
I
do sound negative. I know I sound negative, but I worry that it's just the latest buzz. I worry that it's just the thing to talk about right now, the spot to make money as a consulting firm. Not you, CJ, because you're fantastic, but you know what I mean.
Well, I think you're spot on, actually, Laura, because what companies are doing, unfortunately, it's like the hottest, it's the hottest thing to talk about. It's very political. It's what we should be doing. But the reality is that you could actually, not even talk about it, not even say we have a diversity plan, we have an inclusion plan, we have an equity and belonging, and just do it. But it's harder to do because of the way the systems are set up, because of the way the organizations are set up. And so what I love to do is do the shock and awe, thing, where we say, okay, so we should really we should have a diversity plan. And I'll say to them, I say, well, if you statistically look at organizations, especially Fortune 500 companies across the board, a lot of programs are working, but a lot of diversity and equity and inclusion programs are not working. Actually, they're actually making the problem worse. We see less people of color or leaders who are successful at these new positions because they're not getting support. People are just getting hired because they're the new diversity hire, which then says, okay, well, am I really valuable? Do I really have the skill sets and the ability to do this? So you see the numbers at the top level of an organization when it comes to, and I say I'm C-suite level positions, people are either, not getting the support they need, they feel excluded, or they don't have a sense of belonging, so they go to another organization or they're starting their own business. We had this experience of the great resignation and people starting their own business, just taking time off. I called one of my friends, like, I'm in Bermuda. What are you doing there? I just needed time from the corporate world, and COVID gave us that. And so we can see now that a lot of these programs are not working, and some of them are having the opposite effect. Now, some of them are working, but so many more of them are not working. I had one client that actually put a person who was identified as being a woman, a millennial, and a person of color. So he's like, oh, trifecta, the hat trick. Okay, we got all
there's
three.
so many check boxes there. Yay.
So many check boxes, you get excited. Put her in a leadership position. She was not supported. She was not ready. And she ended up doing a horrible job and getting fired. So intention, great. Impact, not so much. And this is what companies are grappling with. I had another client call me and say, I want to put this person, this was a person of color too. I just want to make this clear. A person of color called me and said, I am working with a client who is looking for a person of color to be in leadership position. And we can't find anyone who has the credentials that we need. We found someone who has somewhat of the credentials. And I said, would you hire them if your job was on the line? No. Well, why would you hire them? This is not the problem. You have a pipeline problem. Start all over. I would rather for you to hire someone who was not a person of color if you're going to put someone in that position and have them to fail. Now, these are the conversations we don't have. And I know I have the privilege of having it because I'm a person of color. And I can say, absolutely not. And so this becomes where we need to start. We need to have these difficult, uncomfortable, unpolitically correct, that's the right way to say it, unpolitically correct conversations that says, just because you're a person of color and just because you have a degree doesn't mean you should be in that position. Let's increase our pipeline. Let's create real, true, honest relationships with HBCUs and organizations in tech that have minorities, and then have real qualified people who are different backgrounds and put them in position and support them. That's where we'll find success. And have uncomfortable conversations about the people who didn't make it. And although they were people who were marginalized, they were not qualified or they did not have the support. And here's what we're willing to do to support the ones who we can support. And then let's be honest, there is a pipeline issue. The numbers don't always shake out. One of my clients was, I can't remember what they were in. It was agronomy, or it was something like you don't have a lot of people in general in that field. And now you're looking for more women and people. Because like, okay, that's like a 0.0%. So your numbers that you bring in is never going to be, unless you just, bring people in that are like, you groom them from grade school, right? Well, that's going to take you 12 years. And that's one of the things NASA had to do to get more people in the space program. So these are the things that we really have to be honest with. People want to flip a switch of diversity, equity, inclusion, and that bring all diversity in the organization, which is actually going to cause more challenges before it gets better. And everyone's happy and everyone feels good and belonging, and we all look good together on in a picture that we can put on the website.
I think what you're saying is so important. And again, one of the things is, I don't think as a leader or as a manager, you get to choose who you want to develop or who you want to make feel good. Or it's the notion is that you should be taking care of people. If you choose, leadership and management is a lot of hard work. So it means that you're responsible for your team. It means for all of your people, the good stuff, the bad stuff, and not picking and choosing. And it means you're committed to the hard work of developing diversity, of finding it, of sharing knowledge, of giving people opportunities to develop. And it takes time, it takes effort. And I think sometimes what I see in organizations, you have people who maybe they get a little bit lazy. And so they pick their one or two favorites, and then everything happens that way. So it's the effort that goes in there to create the kind of an environment that you're describing.
And EJ, one of the other things that you're mentioning is that we're also fighting against our humanistic way of being. So we all have a brain that has bias in it, and it's there to protect us. It's not intentional. Most people don't get up in the morning and say, I'm going to be biased against a certain group. Most people, right? Generally speaking, people get up and they want to do good, but because of our background in the zip code story, our brain builds an algorithm of experiences, and it builds a hierarchy of what we're going to do first and what we value. And this helps us make decisions, but unconsciously, there are sometimes biases and stereotypes. And if we don't mitigate them, it's hard to do those things. So the part that we're being lazy is to slow down, which is hard to do as a leader because you got so many things that are happening, and to then start to mitigate your bias and to start to say, well, why am I choosing this person to have gone to this school? And maybe it's not a 4-year school. This person went to a 2-year school first and then went to a 4-year school, or maybe they had to work, so they didn't have the internship opportunities that this person had. I actually have to slow down and think about that. And that hurts. It literally hurts my brain to just slow down because I have so many things to do in the course of a day. So,
yeah. I'm going to pause us here for a quick moment, CJ, and we're going to go to commercial. When we get back, I'm really curious to know what your favorite pastime is, because Ed's favorite pastime is changing the light bulbs in this house because it takes so long. So he has a lot of fun doing it. So I can't wait to hear what your favorite pastime is.
I find it electrifying. Really electrifying.
Oh, goodness. We'll be right back. Thank you.
We'll get back to the rest of the episode in just a moment. But first, a word from our presenting sponsor, TeleoConnects.com. As a manager, you know how important it is to solve issues right the first time. If you don't, you risk wasting precious time, money, and resources on things that could make the problem even worse. That is why at Teleo, we start by getting to the root cause of your specific problem, so that together, we can implement the solution that gets you the results you are looking for the first time. Teleo's unique approach to management consulting and resourcing is focused on building a community of experts that work together to help clients solve complex problems and find success in their businesses. We work collaboratively with you to implement the solution that will solve the root cause of your problem, not just the symptoms of that problem. From management consulting and project management to staff augmentation and resource recruitment, Teleo's trusted team can help you take your organization to the next level. If you're interested in learning more about how Teleo can help you overcome your organization's obstacles and take your business to the next level, visit TeleoConnects.com today.
Well, welcome back to the Mission Driven Leader podcast, and we've got CJ Gross with us today. CJ, what is your favorite pastime? What do you like to do when you're not crazy busy, signing books and telling fantastic stories?
Creating more stories. So through travel, right? Through traveling to countries that I don't speak the language and try to figure it out. I actually, since when I turned 40, I picked up some activities that I think are interesting. So one was learning Spanish, and I only know 12 words, so that's actually not working out well. I picked up scuba diving, swimming, and then scuba diving, right, all in the same. Motocross. And that's weird to start when you're 40, right? But I started motocross when I'm 40, and then I surfing and scuba. Yes, surfing, scuba diving. Oh, skeet shooting. So I do those things.
Well, half those things you can do out at my farm, so just come on out anytime. Just not the scuba diving.
Okay.
But we do have a lot of languages that we speak.
I bet.
So I was wondering, maybe we could shift a little bit and talk about design thinking for a couple of minutes. Mm-hmm. Is that okay? Mm-hmm.
Please.
I think that design thinking, in my opinion, it's maybe been out probably 8 to 10 years, where it's really kind of getting some movement and that sort of thing. And maybe even only in the last 5 years have people really started to use it more effectively, if you will. So maybe how about we start with you explaining to our audience a little bit about what design thinking is, and then we can talk about what the pitfalls are and why it's not always successful in organizations, or why organizations aren't using it.
So design thinking is really a strategy of how to solve a problem from a more inclusive approach. It started in the engineering architectural approach. So when I was in the field of engineering, so if we designed something and we didn't check in with the architects, we noticed that particular project was not as effective as other projects where we brought in architects. But the problem with the architects and engineers, we don't play well together. And so because of that, that's part of the issue. And so now how does that apply to diversity, equity, and inclusion? The same exact thing. It's bringing in people who will be affected by this policy, this product, this service, and getting not just their buy-in, but also getting where are their blind spots in this policy that we're about to produce. Where are there blind spots in this product or service? So one of the things, for example, design thinking helped. Well, it didn't help, but so male engineers were designing the strollers for people who were like joggers, those jogger strollers when they first started really getting hot. But the women were using them more than men. And so, but if you have a man that is designing something, and that's not your perspective, and you're not the soccer mom, maybe the soccer dad, but our approaches are totally different to how we live life. So yeah, you might be a great engineer, but you don't have the interface, the same usability. You may not be juggling multiple kids and dealing with all of the aspects that someone who is of the different sex may or may not deal with. That product is not going to be as impactful. So it's the same thing when we're designing diversity, equity, inclusion solutions for organizations, and we don't get buy-in. We're in a closed room with the C-suite who we don't even have enough diversity to make a decision, and we're like, yeah, that sounds good. I think but what we're really saying is that's going to look good for us. That's going to sound good for us. Are we really? If we were truly thinking like engineers, we would be thinking about feasibility. How feasible is this? What is the impact? What is the ROI, return on investment? And what strategy is going to get us the long-term effect? And that's what real leaders do. And I'm not saying that we're not real leaders, but we're not acting like real leaders.
I'm pretty sure that I actually wore a couple bathing suits that were designed by men in the past. So I feel like I know exactly what you're talking about, CJ. Exactly.
I think I've worn bathing suits designed by women. So it's one piecers. Yeah.
But in all sincerity, I think that the opportunity that exists with design thinking is really robust. So why is it that we're not seeing it? Like, why didn't it just like light on fire and every organization wants to use it? Because that's not happening, right? Like there are pockets, don't get me wrong, but why isn't it just like everywhere?
Well, I think the real problem is we're solving for the wrong problem. So when you look at a mathematical equation, you're solving for what, right? I'm solving for X. I'm solving. But when we look at it and we're solving for specific things that are political things, politicized things, we're shooting ourselves in the foot, and we're and I'll give you one example of how we shift our energy to things that are very political. I worked with a very politically charged and associated organization in Washington, D.C., and there was a conversation around race. And every time you said something around race, people were like, eyeballs get big, and they shut off their camera. So one person said, if you touch this is the African-American woman, middle management, leadership, awesome worker, awesome person. And she said, she had natural hair. She said, if a person who's non-person of color, basically white, if they touch my hair, that's racist. And everyone goes, oh, racist, I'm out. So there was like everyone, cut their cameras off. And so I leaned into that. I said, okay, well, when you say racist, what do you mean? We have to identify what racism means and what it is and what is not and who can be racist, right? And it was really shocking when I kind of leveled the playing field. We won't go into it, but that the outcome of that was This was really not about race. This was about culture. I know not to touch a Black woman's hair because it's cultural. When I was in Chile, it was Chile. Yeah, Chile. People were kissing me on both sides of the cheek because, that's what they did. And initially I was like, what's going on here? Right. And someone said, oh, you're American. Let me explain. So and it's a cultural difference that we have in our organizations, and it's not always what we think it is. And it's very easy because everything is politicized that we assume it's one thing and it's not. And so we need to get down to the root of the problem opposed to staying at the surface of the symptom. So we're not dealing with the root cause of the issue. We're dealing with the symptom of the problem. And that's why we're not moving things forward. And so when you go to a company and you say something that's politically incorrect, you don't want to get a lawsuit. You don't want it to be canceled. You don't want to have all these problems, so you don't say anything. And what happens is I'm delivering a presentation in person, and I walk into the restroom, and someone sees me, and even in the restroom they say, "Here's what I wanted to say, but I was afraid to say." And this is all backgrounds. It doesn't matter what the identity is, all backgrounds. And so we live in this environment where people are afraid to be authentic, and there's no safety net for people to make a mistake. And this is part of the challenges that we had. I kind of went off on a tangent. I don't even know if I answered the question. But
you 100% answered the question. In fact, at the very beginning, I almost mic dropped it. It was so good, which is we're not looking at the problem, right? Like we're just going over stuff and going through the motions and pretending. And I think that surmises it perfectly, is that really we're not digging in and being thoughtful and asking the questions and hearing everybody out. The word authentic, I think, I've told Ed or AJ, sorry. I've told him numerous times that I feel like
he changed his name too.
Oh my goodness, he changed his name. What a nerd. I just created a bias.
Yeah, that's awful.
Yeah.
I've been influenced by CJ, and there you
now
go.
You're EJ.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now I'm the artist known as EJ. Yeah.
But it's funny because I actually believe that using the term authentic is overused now, and it's I'm just being my authentic self here. And it's like, are you? Because if you were your authentic self, you'd be actually saying the true answer, right? Like I'm worn out by the term almost, and that's really
now
bad.
You're overthinking, though.
So important. The term is so important.
Now you're overthinking.
Am I?
I mean, I think authenticity and genuineness are two of the most important things for teams, organizations, and I think people should be talking about that. I think like the person wearing shorts. If that's comfortable, when I was working at NASA 40 years ago, you went to one part of the organization that was completely genuine, and they were the scientists. Mm. Because scientists at NASA are the next line before God, right? Engineers are there to support, to do the work, to build things that the scientists need. The scientists don't know why managers are there. And I was with one of the first interviews I did. I was asking, one of the scientists how they worked in the culture, and he said, "I don't worry about the culture." He said, "Look at how I'm dressed. Does it look like I care about the culture?" And he cared about his own aspects of it, but got on my own tangents there. But I think authenticity, genuineness is so important. And I think we as humans, we tend to be so scared to be our own selves. It's not even just so an organization, a leader, friends, they really have to help me, I think, being comfortable, because the natural is not that. The natural is, let me show you what I think you want to see.
And that's what I'm saying, though, Ed, when people are saying, "Oh, I'm just trying to be my authentic self," they're using the term, but they're not committing to the term. Like I ran this workshop. Yeah. Oh, well, then we're done. I think the podcast is over. Then this is the last time he's ever agreed with me. First, last, all the above. No, and I was running this workshop, and at the end, I was asking a really tough question, saying, so why, we've got all of these answers, and they're like, yeah, we're really happy. I go, so then why are we here? And they're like, what? And I said, why are we here if you guys already knew all the answers? If you already knew how to communicate with each other, if you already knew how to engage and how to be supportive team members, why did we have this workshop today? Right. And all of them kind of stumbled around, and I said, they gave me answers. I'm like, that sounds a little bit like an excuse right now. Can you give me some other ideas? And I was boxing them in. Like I was kind of stopping the story a little bit, because I wanted them to be really authentic and get mad at me, right? Like I wanted them to fight back and defend their line. And by the end of it, they said, well, our company culture doesn't allow for it. Okay, now we're hitting something. If the company culture doesn't do it, I know you can't change that, but you can change your department. And you guys need to decide as a team, do you want to change your department? So I guess, CJ, my next question for you is, do you believe that a department can live within its own culture, even though the rest of the organization follows to a different beat?
Yes, if you have strong leadership. Leadership creates the culture, and they drive the culture, and the culture drives success. And so it's like, if you ever gone to a restaurant and they ring a bell and they start singing when you get in there, it becomes a part of the culture. And I'm pretty sure the first worker goes, get hired. They're like, I'm not doing that. And before you know it, they're ringing the bell, singing. And then you expect that. And you go to another restaurant, like, oh, they don't do that here. And it's infectious that we do what others do, but we need strong leaders to create that and then get to that tipping point where then everyone in the culture says, oh, I'm in this group and this is what we do. And everyone else respects that because the culture is so strong. Then it catches fire throughout the rest of the organization, and then you have organizational change. But someone has to be the outlier first. And there's a saying, the first person through the wall gets bloody, or gets the bloodiest. And it's true. The first person that says this is not right, and I'm actually not going to just say it's not right. I'm actually going to do something that's contrary to the normal of the culture. But they have to have a certain level of power, let's be honest. And when I say power, it could be expert power. It doesn't mean they're the leader.
It could be influence, yeah.
They can just say, I'm going to start this. And until someone says we're not doing it, or you give me a good enough reason why, then I'm going to continue to do this. And then before you know it, you can even manage up, where you're starting to create something that positional leaders start to create that shift and change. And then before you know it, throughout the organization, people expect, oh, that's this particular group. They're going to call things what they are. They're going to stand up and they're going to fight for what they believe in. And they're going to be respectful. They're going to do it in a respectful way. And they're going to respect the values of the organization. But they are the ones that are going to be the fire starters, and they're going to give direction to the organization. So absolutely, but it takes bravery, it takes leadership, it takes courage.
Fantastic. It sounds a little bit like your scientists at NASA, does it, Ed?
Yeah, no, I think basically having the courage to be me and move forward, and it's also having the courage to get a little bloody. Success comes from making mistakes. Whenever you see someone who never wants to make a mistake, you see someone who's never going to leave the house. And to a certain extent, one of the things that I find interesting, CJ, about your background is successful engineer, GE, and now you've been doing organization development, managing change and leadership development for 20 years. What takes a good engineer to want to be a person who deals with people?
So I was a mechanical designer, and it was a natural gift that I had when I worked with General Electric. I would walk around the office and talk to people about their personal lives and what was going on, what was the challenge with the projects they were working on. And then when it came to actually working on a project together, the engineers that were the most genius and intelligent, smartest, always had a challenge working together with other department heads and leaders. And I was able to bring them together because I was saying, hey, Mike, you talked about, having your family this weekend. And so I'm assuming you probably want to get off work early, right? You're not going to be able to get off work early unless we get some resources from the other team members. So how do we do that? And so building those relationships and connections. And to be honest, I wasn't really thrilled about, designing ductwork and drawing basically lines, right? I was using CAD, computer-aided drafting So I wasn't really excited about that. But the great thing about working with engineers and EJ, I will say, engineers or tech people are usually left brainers, and they're like they have a BS detector, and if you're
Yep.
BSing them, they just shut off. So it's like you have to be deliberate with them. You have to get down to the bottom line, and you have to tell them why it matters quicker and sooner. If not, they tune out. Those are the best ones to work with because they'll call you on stuff and they'll say, if it makes sense, and if you give us the right amount, the why and why we should buy in, we will.
Yes.
The problem is nothing against my other groups who are more the right brains, like to feel good about everything that's happening, right? Well, we're not going to feel good. Matter of fact, we're going to feel a lot of pain right now. Is everyone ready for that? Does everyone want to sign up for that? No, I don't want to sign up. I want to be in the namaste, right? So that becomes a challenge, and it's really my experience at GE, because we did they did force ranking, they did Six Sigma process improvement, and most of my colleagues and consultants have a different background.
Yeah.
And that is what I think makes me an outlier in this work, to have the technical component and aspect and have a degree in organizational management and leadership. And then taking the emotional intelligence and cultural intelligence and merging those together with my own background experiences is what gives it. And that's what really design thinking is about, coming up with solutions and products and services that are innovative, which means two things that already exist that you bring it together. And it's like, oh, PB&J, that's tasty. I never thought about that before. And now before you know it, it's a thing. This is what we do. This is how we do things.
The advantage of being different is what I love. I think the biggest advantage I had at NASA, I was a horse of a different color from the standpoint of being an OD psychology guy in a land of scientists and engineers. Yeah. And at first I was quiet because I figured, I don't want them to know what I don't know. And then you realize that seeing things from a different perspective is a tremendous gift, but also a tremendous ability to influence things. And you did it in kind of that. You're working the engineering, we're skilled at that, but then the ability to appreciate people, the ability to get people to talk, the ability to see maybe at that system level, the technical as well as the social, maybe the political, led you into this new journey. That's very amazing.
One of the things about design thinking that's very powerful is that we have bias. We have biases in our past experiences of success, right? So if I want to design a cup, right, I'm going to find other cup designers. You know what they're going to produce? What they've been producing, which is the normal cup. But if you want to design a different type of cup, you need to bring in people who design cars and shoes, because they're going to see it from a totally different perspective. Now, they're both designers, but they have different backgrounds and passes, and it's going to be contrary to the way you want to design. Now, it will feel uncomfortable initially, but you'll get a new product and service. And that's really what design thinking is about. But we expand that not just to industry and discipline, like engineers or architects, but we expand it to race, we expand it to gender, we expand it to sexual orientation, religion. Because someone will say, oh, I remember this. We worked at an engineering firm. We were working with an engineering firm, and someone said, women don't like to sit in the front row of a presentation when they have those conference tables, when they don't have the flap in the front. And I was like, well, what's the flap in the front? Because I was always thinking, what's the flap in the front for? Well, because when women wear dresses, not, for those who, or whoever wants to wear a dress, they have to be considerate that that's going to, you want to create some barrier there. I never thought about that because that's not my experience. So that's why we need different identities. We need different genders, different geographical locations, people that come from different countries that say, we don't do that in our country. We do it this way. And it's like, where do we meet in the middle to create something totally different? Because if not, and here's the last thing I'll say about this is, when we don't have buy-in on the front end, but we start a program or process, we're like, oh, we're going to do a mentorship program. We're just going to put people together and it'll work out. But if we don't have people from those marginalized identities saying this is what mentorship would work for us, this is how mentorship would work for us, it will fall flat on its face. And you spent hundreds of thousands of dollars just to say, I've done it, but it's not worked.
Right.
And so if someone was managing your money, they would be fired. But we don't do that in our organizations. We glorify just the effort because it makes us feel good.
Right.
I'm gonna make us take a hard turn right, because we've been enjoying the conversation so much that I feel terrible because I haven't been able to ask you a really important question, which is about what is your favorite part of your book. I really want us to just spend maybe a couple minutes just on what your zip code story is. What's gonna be the one thing outlier that really made you enjoy the experience of writing your book?
Talking about two things. This one was enjoyable, and the other one was not enjoyable. It was necessary. My experience through mentorship. I have a chapter in the book that says mentorship, the bridge to equity, because organizations are trying to figure out how to get equity. Equity is the how we distribute resources, and that's time, money, training. But mentorship is something we don't think about when we think about equity. But if you look at the C-suite, anyone that's super successful, they've had mentorship. And for me, I wouldn't be on this call. The book wouldn't have been published. I wouldn't have done the TED Talk, and all these things wouldn't happen without two really critical mentors that I had in my life, and that led me to this point. And when you're talking about mentorship, when you're talking about diverse talent or diverse individuals who could be at the C-suite level of the organization, they need a specific type of mentorship. One who understands what we call class migration, someone who may be a first generation college student. And it doesn't matter what their race is, but definitely if there's a person of color and you have a first generation college student, they might not have the resources or conversations around the dinner table or experiences. So you may have the degree, you may have some experiences, but you don't have the guidance. And people fall flat when it comes to making those difficult decisions for their career. So I enjoy talking about my mentorship conversations and the funny things that happen and the not so funny things and how they disagree with me. I thought I was right, but I wasn't. And second is the chapter where I talk about imposter syndrome. And you see women experience this, and we work a lot in engineering, so you see that women experience this, and people who, we talked about the name with EJ and Ed, people who have different names, different cultural names to pronounce, may find themselves in a meeting, find themselves leading a project or wanting to lead a project, but they have this imposter syndrome, so they don't raise their hand, they don't submit the idea, they don't share, they don't push back against an idea that they don't think is going to work, because they feel like they don't belong. And so I tell the story about how I was at SHRM, Society for Human Resource Management, delivering this concept on class bias, and I freaked out because I never delivered at an industry conference at that point, and I had this imposter syndrome, and it really can give you PTSD by really not having someone to help you through that process. And you find that junior employees have it. People that are marginalized or identities, or just people just have never had the experience. So those are the two parts of the book that I think I either enjoyed writing or I thought, I have to write, it's important.
Well, one of my favorite mentors on the call with us, which is EJ. I didn't realize it was EJ. And now I've got a new fantastic mentor in CJ. So I'm pretty excited to have half my mentorship program right here with us right now. One last question for you before we tie off here, and I would really, you've shared so much of who you are, and I feel like I do know you personally from the few conversations we've had in the past, and I think it's because you really do just show up as who you are. And so I was wondering, from your perspective, what is the one superpower that you think you have? Not that you think you have, that you know you have, and what is it that you do to water it to make sure it flourishes on a regular basis?
What an amazing question. Wow. I feel honored to answer this question.
That's a great question.
It's a wonderful question. So I took an assessment. It was called the Keirsey Temperament assessment, and it was a spinoff of the Myers-Briggs. She uses the same letter, and it said, so you're good at developing relationships across differences with people, number one, and number two, you're good at understanding business systems. And so with those two together, it became my superpower, and I just had to apply it. So when I would go into an organization, or work, when I say work inside of an organization, I wouldn't have power, but I'd build a relationship with people who had power and be what Stephen Covey calls a trim tabber. I'd be a person that would be making a shift and change, but I didn't have the power, but I was making it with a person who had the power to create a greater impact. And so for me, that is what I realized to be my superpower. And I use it pretty much every day in all of the work that I do. I use it with my kids and my wife, tons of ways of building connections across differences.
Well, and it brings people together in a really easy form, because you can see how people are going to connect. You can see how things are going to happen, and you can help introduce the idea to people so it feels more comfortable in order for them to realize their own capability and their own passion and how they want to show up. So that's a pretty special superpower, Ed. EJ.
No, really. And you see that. No, I mean, from the conversation here, you have a way, CJ, of putting everyone at ease. I think having a natural conversation. Conversation is so important, right? And the ability to get people to talk and to converse. I think people don't realize how important that is, but obviously it's something that you do. And the discussion of mentors and I think illustrate a lot of that. So I think that superpower definitely comes through.
I want to bring light to something that's happened on this call, and it happens in organizations. So initially you were ED, right? And then you said, okay, now I'm going to be EJ. And Laura's like, okay, really? But okay. And as you can see, then what you did was change your name on the screen. And it took a little bit of time for her to start to say it. And even there was a pause there, like, wait a minute, am I saying it right? And now I'm saying it again. And this is what it takes for a change to happen in organizations. When you look at people who, could be the name, I've been saying the name for the wrong time. I've been using the wrong terminology. I'm not familiar with diversity, equity, inclusion. I'm going to make mistakes. And you gave grace, and you were, I think you gave grace, but it took time, and it's still taking time. And that's what we really need to understand in an organization. It doesn't happen overnight. A steamliner doesn't turn an ocean on a dime. It takes on average 2 miles. And it takes that level of time and intentionality for organizational change to happen as we do this work.
Yeah. I love that.
We didn't even know we were a case study. We didn't even know we were a case study.
Oh, I've known we've been a case study for quite a long time.
Oh, we've been a study. We've been what a great correlation, CJ. That's amazing. The light bulbs have been going on nonstop for me. And one thing that we like to do at the end here is we like to kind of reflect on our conversation and help to figure out what new things am I going to take away from this, so that Laurel does something a little bit different than she did yesterday or even an hour ago. And for me, I think I'm going to continue to force the uncomfortable conversations. I think that's where we get to the heart of the matter. I think that's the purpose of me being a consultant to organizations. And I think that is going to be the greatest reward for people, so long as they're ready for it and willing to participate in it. So that's my takeaway. So thank you so much. I've got a lot of others, but that's the big one for me.
Awesome.
Ed, what about yourself?
What I come back to with CJ is really the importance of being able to create the opportunity for change. So this has been about diversity and inclusivity and equity, and it's about leadership and projects. But all of these things are about getting better, and that means that we have to create environments where change can happen. And you hit it, nicely. We were playing a little with the name thing, but I have been called, my middle name is Jay, and so I've been called EJ and connecting there. But I was thinking, do I change it? Do I do this? Is that a distraction? Is it? And it creates a little bit of I didn't know you're, but I think change is at the core of this. If we can create environments, teams, societies that are comfortable experimenting, treating each other with respect so that we can change, to me, that's the takeaway, that one of the key things you talk about.
One more takeaway. So think, if you not just changing your name from Ed to EJ, but think about changing your gender. Yeah. So think about how impactful, right. We just talked about how hard it was just from the name, but think about having a coworker that came in as Michael, or Michael now as Michelle, and never told you because they didn't feel comfortable. It was like, boom, it's happening.
Yeah.
And now Michelle would need to give you space and time to adjust in the organization, but also you would have to then need to shift and change and do some internal work to even see how that lines up with your values. And so that becomes the bigger thing as well.
Well, this was an absolute fantastic hour, and it flew by. I'm so excited for you taking the rest of your tour, your book tour throughout North America. We're excited to probably seeing you again with some PMI events, CJ. So I just can't thank you enough for participating today, and I really look forward to the next time we get to do a podcast with you.
Yeah, this was delightful. And I thank you, Laurel. I mean, pulling in CJ, I've had so much fun in the last hour. So thank you very much.
Once in a while, I win.
You usually, you always pull in cool people, and this was delightful. Thank you, CJ. I really have learned a lot in terms of a lot of these different areas, in terms of thinking about things. And so thank you for the time, and I will be getting your book.
Yeah. Again, CJ Gross with What Your Zip Code Story book. You got to get it if you want to know it. Thanks, everybody. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Mission Driven Leader podcast presented by TaleoConnects.com. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review wherever you listen to the show.